I didn't find the video by accident. The algorithm handed it to me on a silver platter right as I was standing in the laundry room folding my daughter-in-law's silk blouses. I am Jacqueline Stone, a 65-year-old widow who believes in keeping a quiet, orderly life. When my son David and his wife Sarah asked to move in to save money for their own place, I cleared out 2 rooms and welcomed them. I didn't charge rent. I just wanted to help. My phone chimed on the ironing board. A notification popped up from an account I barely followed. It was Sarah's. I tapped the screen expecting a recipe or a dance trend. Instead, I saw my own kitchen. Sarah was standing in front of my granite countertops, holding her phone high. "You want to know the best part about living with a mother-in-law?" She whispered to the camera, her eyes wide with dramatic flair. "She literally does nothing all day, so it's her job to clean up after us." What else is she going to do with her time? Watch game shows. She flipped the camera. It zoomed in on the sink full of dishes they had left from breakfast, then panned toward the hallway where I had just been vacuuming. She laughed, a sharp mocking sound that echoed through my phone speaker. I scrolled down. The video had over 80,000 likes. Strangers were cheering her on. "Put her to work, girl," one comment read. "Free maid service, you won't hear me complaining," read another. I didn't cry. I didn't drop the phone in horror, and I certainly didn't feel the need to scream. I just stared at the screen, listening to that sharp laugh loop over and over. I neatly folded the last silk blouse, placed it in her laundry basket, and smiled. I closed the app. My decision was made in a heartbeat. I picked up the heavy laundry basket full of their freshly washed clothes. Usually, I carried it up the stairs, sorted it into their dressers, and organized David's work shirts by color. Today, I walked into the hallway and set the basket down right in the middle of the floor, directly in the path of the front door. I walked into the kitchen. The sink was overflowing with their breakfast dishes, crusted oatmeal bowls, coffee mugs stained with lipstick, and a pan layered with burnt grease. I didn't touch them. I reached past the mess, grabbed my favorite mug, and poured myself a cup of herbal tea. At 4 o'clock, I started making dinner. I took a single piece of salmon from the fridge, seasoned it perfectly, and roasted some asparagus. Normally, I cooked a full meal for 3, ensuring Sarah had the gluten-free options she preferred. Today, I set 1 plate on the dining table. At 6:30, the front door unlocked. I heard David's heavy footsteps, followed immediately by a loud thud. "What the hell is the laundry doing in the middle of the hall?" Sarah complained, kicking the basket aside. They walked into the kitchen, dropping their bags on the counter. Sarah sniffed the air. "Oh, salmon. Smells good. Where are our plates?" "Jacqueline." I took a slow sip of my tea, savoring the warmth. I looked up at her, keeping my expression entirely neutral. "I only cooked for myself tonight." David frowned, loosening his tie. "Mom, is everything okay? Are you feeling sick?" "I feel wonderful," I answered smoothly, slicing into my fish. "But I realized I've been taking up too much of your time. From now on, I'll be stepping back. You'll need to handle your own laundry and your own meals." Sarah crossed her arms, her eyes darting to the dirty sink, then back to my perfectly clean plate. She didn't know it yet, but the free ride was over. The silence in the kitchen was thick enough to cut with a knife. Sarah stared at me, waiting for the punchline. When none came, her face flushed with irritation. "You're seriously not going to cook for us?" she demanded. "We just worked an 8-hour shift. We're exhausted." I placed my fork down softly. I understand completely. Being an adult is tiring. There are frozen pizzas in the garage freezer, I believe. David stepped between us, holding his hands up like a referee. "Okay, let's calm down. Mom, where is this coming from? You always cook on weekdays." Did something happen? I looked directly at Sarah. She swallowed hard. her eyes suddenly shifting away from mine. I just learned a valuable lesson about time management, I replied calmly. Since I apparently do nothing all day, I've decided to fully commit to the role. I wouldn't want to contradict the internet. Sarah's head snapped back to me. The color drained from her face. She knew. It was just a joke, Jacqueline, she blurted out, her voice defensive. It's a TikTok trend. Everyone exaggerates for views. You're taking it entirely out of context. I am not taking it out of context, Sarah. I am simply agreeing with you, I smiled gently. You are absolutely right. I am retired. I should be relaxing. So starting today, I am. I stood up, picked up my single plate and mug, washed them in the sink right next to their towering pile of dirty dishes, and dried my hands on a towel. Mom, come on, David pleaded, looking at the mess. She didn't mean it. Don't make this a huge deal. There is no deal to be made, David, I stated, walking past him. I am just enjoying my retirement. Please make sure you run the dishwasher before you go to bed. Good night. I walked up the stairs, leaving them standing in the kitchen, surrounded by their own mess. The next morning, I woke up early, enjoyed the quiet house, and sat at my desk with my laptop. The laundry incident was just the beginning. If I was going to redefine my role in this house, I needed to look at the foundations. When David and Sarah moved in, I gave David a credit card linked to my account. It was meant strictly for household groceries and emergency house repairs, just to make things easier, since I asked for zero rent. I hadn't scrutinized the statements in months, trusting my son to manage it. I logged into my banking portal and opened the credit card ledger. My eyes narrowed. Mixed in with the local grocery store charges were other names. Sephora, $145. Starbucks, $15 almost every morning. A boutique fitness studio downtown, $200. I scrolled back through the previous 3 months. The pattern was clear. Sarah had linked my card to her phone and was treating it like her personal allowance. They were saving for a house supposedly, but they were doing it by living entirely on my dime, right down to her morning lattes. I didn't feel angry. I felt a cold, sharp clarity. People treat you exactly the way you allow them to. I had made myself a convenience, and they had happily used me. I moved my mouse to the account management tab. I didn't call David to argue. I didn't text Sarah to demand an explanation. Explanations were just excuses disguised in pretty words. Instead, I clicked on the authorized users list. I selected David's name. A prompt popped up asking if I was sure I wanted to revoke access and cancel the secondary card. I clicked confirm. Then I changed my banking passwords, updated my security questions, and locked my primary savings account. I closed the laptop, walked down to the kitchen, and made myself a fresh pot of coffee. The real test was about to begin. It happened at exactly 1:15 p.m. My phone vibrated on the coffee table. It was David. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Hello, David. Mom did the bank flag your card for fraud. He sounded stressed, speaking quickly over the background noise of his office. Sarah just tried to pay for a haircut and some products at the salon, and the card declined. She's embarrassed and waiting at the counter. I took a sip of my coffee, watching a squirrel dart across the backyard fence. There's no fraud, David. I canceled the authorized card this morning. Silence stretched on the other end of the line. You canceled it. Why, how is she supposed to pay for her appointment? With her own debit card, I assume I answered smoothly. That card was for household groceries. Since I am no longer cooking for you, you won't need to buy groceries for the house. You can handle your own finances from now on. Mom, this is crazy. You're punishing us over a stupid video, he raised his voice. I am not punishing anyone, I replied, my tone perfectly even. I am simply untangling our finances. You are 30 years old. Paying for your wife's haircut is not my responsibility. Have a good afternoon at work. I hung up. 2 hours later, the front door slammed open. Sarah stormed into the living room, her face flushed with fury, her newly styled hair bouncing around her shoulders. "You humiliated me on purpose," she shouted, pointing a finger at me. I had to call David to transfer money while the receptionist stared at me. I didn't stand up. I just looked at her from my armchair. If paying your own bills humiliates you, Sarah, you might want to rethink your lifestyle. Now please lower your voice in my home. She stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, completely unable to process the word no. By Thursday, the atmosphere in the house was suffocating for them. The pile of dirty dishes had grown so large that they were forced to buy paper plates. Their laundry basket was overflowing because neither of them knew how to run the washing machine without shrinking their clothes. I went about my days happily. I cleaned only my spaces, washed only my clothes, and cooked only my meals. That evening, I overheard Sarah loudly complaining to David in the hallway. "I can't take this toxic environment anymore, David. She's suffocating us. We need a break. Book that cabin up north for the weekend." "I just need to get out. Get out of this house." David mumbled an agreement, clearly desperate to appease her. The next morning, they packed their overnight bags in a rush. Sarah walked past me in the kitchen without making eye contact. David lingered by the door, looking guilty. "We'll be back Sunday night, Mom. Try to, I don't know, cool off while we're gone." I smiled pleasantly. "Have a wonderful trip. Drive safely." The moment their car pulled out of the driveway, I locked the front door. I walked straight to the kitchen drawer, pulled out my car keys, and drove to the local hardware store. I didn't buy anything dramatic, just a few heavy-duty doorknobs with keypad locks, a large roll of bubble wrap, and 20 sturdy moving boxes. I wasn't going to kick them out. That would require eviction notices, 30-day warnings, and unnecessary drama. But this was my house, fully paid off, filled with things I had bought with my own hard-earned money. If they felt my presence was toxic and my contributions were nothing, then they deserved the opportunity to live completely independent of me. I was about to give them exactly what they asked for. The weekend was entirely mine, and I had a lot of packing to do. I started in the living room. The massive 65-inch OLED television on the wall I bought that last Christmas. I carefully unplugged it, wrapped it in blankets, and wheeled it into my master suite. The plush, expensive sectional sofa, where Sarah spent hours scrolling on her phone, I dragged the pieces one by one into the attached garage. The Persian rug, the solid oak coffee table, the floor lamps, all of it followed. By Saturday afternoon, the living room was completely bare, save for one cheap, uncomfortable love seat that David had brought with him from his college apartment. Next, I moved to the kitchen. I packed up my Le Creuset pots, my high-end espresso machine, the air fryer, and the good silverware. I boxed up the premium spices, the good olive oil, and the imported pastas. I carried all these boxes into the garage. Once the garage was full of my property, I installed one of the new keypad locks on the heavy door leading from the kitchen to the garage. I installed the second keypad lock on the door to my master bedroom suite. I walked through the house to inspect my work. The kitchen cupboards held only a few basic plastic plates and their favorite sugary cereals. The living room echoed when I stepped into it. The house wasn't empty. It was simply stripped of my effort, my money, and my comfort. I didn't touch their bedroom. I didn't touch their bathroom. I didn't hide the toilet paper or turn off the electricity. I simply removed myself and everything that belonged to me from their daily existence. On Sunday afternoon, I made myself a cup of tea, pulled a small folding chair into the center of the bare living room, and sat down with a good book. I waited for the sound of their tires in the driveway. At 6 o'clock, the familiar hum of David's car echoed outside. I heard the car doors slam, followed by Sarah's voice complaining about the traffic. The lock turned. The front door swung open. Sarah stepped inside, first her weekend bag slung over her shoulder. She took exactly 2 steps into the entryway before she froze. Her bag slipped off her shoulder, hitting the hardwood floor with a dull thud. David bumped into her from behind. "Hey, keep moving. The bags are heavy." He stopped mid-sentence. They both stood paralyzed, staring into the living room. Without the large rug, the television, the lamps, and the massive sectional, the room looked like an abandoned warehouse. Their voices echoed in the empty space. Sarah's eyes darted frantically around the room, then locked onto me sitting peacefully in my folding chair with my book in my lap. What? What happened? Sarah stammered, the color draining from her face. Were we robbed? Robbed, I turned a page in my book, not bothering to stand. No, dear. No one broke in. David walked cautiously toward the kitchen. I watched his reflection in the hallway mirror as he opened a bare cabinet, then stared at the empty counter where the espresso machine used to sit. He walked back into the living room, his face pale. "Mom, where is all our furniture? Where are the pots? Where is the TV?" I closed my book and looked up at them. "I believe you mean my furniture, my pots, and my TV. And they are safely locked away in my bedroom and the garage." Sarah finally unfroze, stepping forward with her fists clenched. "You took everything. You stripped the house. Are you crazy? How are we supposed to live like this?" I smiled, a genuine, relaxed smile. "You are going to live independently, Sarah. Just like you always wanted." "This is insane!" Sarah yelled, her voice bouncing off the bare walls. "You can't just take away the living room. We live here too." "You sleep here," I corrected her smoothly. "You do not own this space. I do." I reached into the pocket of my cardigan and pulled out a small blue spiral notebook. I held it out to David. He took it hesitantly, his hands slightly trembling. "What is this?" he asked. "That is your reality," I replied. "Open it." David flipped open the cover. Inside, I had written out a very simple, clear list. Mortgage, paid by Jacqueline. Property, taxes, paid by Jacqueline. Electricity and water, paid by Jacqueline. Internet premium speed, paid by Jacqueline. Groceries, including Sarah's cosmetics, paid by Jacqueline. Cleaning and laundry services, performed by Jacqueline. For 2 years, I said, my voice steady and firm. "You have lived in a luxury hotel that I financed and staffed. You saved your money while I spent mine to make your lives comfortable. But according to your wife, I do nothing. So I have adjusted my contributions to match her expectations." Sarah crossed her arms, her face turning red. "You're doing this because of a stupid 15-second video. You're acting like a child." "No, Sarah. I am acting like a landlord," I replied. "From today forward, you will pay 1/3 of the utilities. You will buy your own food. You will cook with your own pans, and you will sit on your own furniture. The Wi-Fi password has also been changed. You can set up your own account with the provider tomorrow." David stared at the notebook, the sheer math of his free ride finally hitting him. "Mom, we can't afford to furnish a house and pay all these bills right now. We're trying to save." Sarah grabbed David's arm. "Don't beg her, David. If she wants to be this petty, we'll just leave. We'll pack our bags right now and move out." She glared at me, waiting for me to panic. She expected me to backtrack to beg my son not to go. Instead, I pointed to the stairs. "The door's right there. Take your time packing." Sarah stared at me, her bluff completely called. When she realized I wasn't going to stop her, she spun around and marched up the stairs, loudly pulling suitcases out of the closet. David didn't follow her. He stood in the middle of the empty living room, looking at the blue notebook in his hands. "Mom?" he said softly, his voice thick with realization. "I let her use your credit card. I watched you clean up after us, and I never stopped her from making that video. I didn't want to argue with her. Peace at the expense of respect is not peace." "David," I told him, standing up from my folding chair, "it is just surrender. I am done surrendering my home." Upstairs, Sarah dragged a heavy suitcase down the hallway. "David, are you coming or not?" "I am going to my sister's." David looked up at the ceiling, then back at me. He looked exhausted, but for the first time in a long time, he looked awake. "I'm staying, Sarah," he called out. Footsteps stopped. "Excuse me," she yelled down the stairs. "I can't afford your lifestyle, and I can't afford to furnish an apartment right now," David replied, his voice firming up. "I'm staying here. I'll pay my share of the bills." 10 minutes later, Sarah stormed out the front door alone, her suitcase wheels clacking aggressively against the pavement. The front door clicked shut, sealing the house in a profound, peaceful silence. David looked around the empty room, ran a hand through his hair, and walked into the kitchen to figure out how to order his own dinner. I walked down the hall, punched the code into my master suite door, and stepped inside. My comfortable recliners were set up perfectly in front of my large television. My espresso machine sat on a small table by the window. I didn't need a lawyer. I didn't need an argument. I just needed my boundaries. I sat down in my favorite chair, turned on my television, and for the first time in 2 years, I truly relaxed in my own home.